Samuel turns another page. His thumbnail lingers near a circled notation. Hull breach seal, port aft section. J. Oduya L. Chen. The accompanying note stretches into the margin. 2 Zalarian medics trapped behind debris field. Used Trilaxian epoxy compound. Held for 6 hours under fire. The handwriting slopes downward at the end, as if written against a vibrating surface. Krillik's secondary eyelids blink rapidly. His people don't weep like humans, but his nasal vents flare wide, pulling in the scent of old paper and something sharper. The distinct metallic tang of emergency sealants used during bombardment. The dates align perfectly with his uncle's last confirmed location. Nearby, Mikhail Vulov rolls up in his wheelchair. His prosthetic legs bear fresh scuff marks from today's maintenance work. Without speaking, he taps a particular log entry dated 2 days after Kepler. The notation reads simply, "Replaced coolant lines, all craft." Mikhail turns his forearm, showing an identical set of chemical burns to Samuel's. "They mixed human and Zalarian formulas," he says. "Our skin peeled off. Their veins collapsed. Took 3 days to find the right ratios." The pages whisper as Samuel flips further. More entries appear. Trilaxian engineers noting repairs made with salvaged Zalarian components. Human medics cataloging which grafts worked on which species burns. The log becomes less a maintenance record and more a running dialogue between species in crisis. Krillik stops at a page where the handwriting shifts mid-entry. The first half flows in neat Zalarian script. Reinforced bulkhead 7C with human alloy plating. Below it, someone else has added in blocky human letters. Holding for Zalarian evac team, 28 confirmed through. The 2 notes share the same timestamp. Samuel runs a fingertip along that page's crease. "Vel wrote the top part," he says. Tommy added the rest before. He doesn't finish. The log's next page shows a gap. Several sheets torn out, their remnants suggesting urgent note-taking. Then entries resume in Samuel's own precise script, each one beginning with the original mechanic's name followed by the lives preserved by that repair. A particular notation catches Krillik's eye. A Poidyastoi, Dravari technicians' jagged handwriting detailing thruster replacements on Hellcat 77. Beside it, Tommy's familiar scrawl. Adjusted nozzle pitch for Zalarian atmospheric entry. Vel's people need the stability. Krillik's implant flashes the tactical significance. Those particular ships carried wounded to Zalaria's high-gravity recovery zones. The hangar's lights flicker as a supply shuttle docks overhead. Samuel uses the momentary dimness to point out another entry. See this weld pattern? His fingernail, permanently stained by coolant, traces a sketch of overlapping repair lines. Human ships don't need cross-bracing here. But Zalarian armor fractures differently under plasma fire. The accompanying note lists 17 names, only 9 of them human. Mikhail wheels closer. His chair's repulsors kick up tiny puffs of dust from the hangar floor. "We learned fast," he says. His eyes lock onto Krillik's. "Your medics taught us how to read Zalarian vital signs. We showed them which human meds wouldn't kill their patients." He nods toward the log. "That book isn't repair codes. It's translation notes." Krillik's turns one last page. The final entry before the war's official end shows a list in 18 different languages. Simple phrases like "air leak here" and "engine hot" written phonetically. At the bottom, someone has added in crude but recognizable Zalarian battle glyphs. "We live together or burn alone." Dr. Sterling approaches silently, holding out a second logbook. This one Zalarian issued, its pages made of durable polymer film. He flips to the same time period. The entries mirror Samuel's. Repair notes intercut with survival tallies, warnings about incompatible human physiology, gratitude for shared tools. Where Samuel's log shows a grease-stained thumbprint, this one bears the faint acid burns of Zalarian blood. Samuel closes both books with care. The sound seems louder than it should. 2 covers shutting simultaneously after years of parallel history. Outside, a mixed squadron of cadets runs drills, their laughter filtering through the open hangar doors. Krillik looks from the logs to Hellcat 77's polished hull. His claw extends, then retracts before touching the metal. Somewhere in those overlapping weld patterns and modified components lies proof neither species could have survived alone. The ship becomes something new under his gaze. Not a relic of human loss, but an ongoing conversation in steel and perseverance. Mikhail hands him a fresh polishing cloth. The fabric still smells of the antiseptic used to treat his chemical burns years ago. Without speaking, both veterans return to work. Samuel on the starboard thrusters, Mikhail realigning the landing gear. After a moment, Krillix joins them. His first polishing strokes follow the exact pattern Samuel used earlier, carefully avoiding the inscribed names near each repaired section. The motion feels unfamiliar yet inevitable, like relearning a language once forgotten. Somewhere in the hangar's depths, a Trilaxian welder fires up her torch. The blue light reflects off Hellcat 77's hull, illuminating the network of scars and repairs that bind two species' survival into singular steel. The overhead lights in Hangar 7 dim to night shift levels, leaving pools of shadow between the grounded fighters. Krillix works alone at Hellcat 77's starboard access panel, his claws making minute adjustments to the thruster alignment. The hangar's quiet hums differently at this hour. Less mechanical clamor, more distant conversations from graveyard shift crews echoing through the vaulted space. His claw catches on something inside the panel's recesses. At first he thinks it's a wiring flaw, but when he angles his wrist light, 2 letters appear scratched into the metal. TB. The grooves show years of grime buildup, yet remain clearly legible. A mechanic's tradition initialing your work. Beside it, something newer gleams. Fresh tool marks spell KV, still learning. Bone 2784. The engraving sits slightly crooked, its letters uneven where his claws struggled with the unfamiliar motion. The coffee cup appears in his peripheral vision before the footsteps register. Samuel sets 2 steaming mugs on the workbench, the larger one nudged toward Krillix's position. He doesn't comment on the engraving, though his gaze lingers on it for half a second too long. Krillix withdraws his claw from the panel. The silence stretches as Samuel checks the thruster calibration with practiced ease, his fingers dancing across the readouts without needing to look. "Why no charges?" Krillix finally asks. His voice sounds rougher than intended. 3 weeks of polishing solvent have irritated his respiratory filters. Samuel sips his coffee. The ceramic bears old stains no detergent can remove. "Punishment teaches what's wrong," he says. His thumb traces a particular weld seam near the access panel. This teaches why it mattered. The answer hangs between them, simple as the repair notations filling the maintenance logs. Krillix studies his reflection in the thruster casing, distorted by the metal's curvature, his cranial ridges appearing less pronounced than usual. Outside, a docking klaxon sounds briefly before cutting off. The night crew works quietly, their tools occasionally clinking against metal. Somewhere aft, a Trilaxian engineer curses at a stubborn coolant valve in his native tongue. Samuel rotates the thruster housing slightly, revealing another set of initials beneath, RH for Rodriguez Hernandez, dated months before Kepler. "He taught Tommy half these repairs," Samuel says. His voice carries no particular weight, just statement of fact. "Died holding the starboard airlock so others could reach pods." Krillix's implant automatically pulls the casualty report. Hernandez's last transmission plays in his auditory feed, a calm request for backup to Sector 7, precisely where the hospital ships had gathered. The date stamp matches the Zalarian evac log showing 1,700 civilians cleared that hour. He looks back at his own engraving. The still learning part suddenly feels too small for what these past weeks have uncovered. His claw hovers near the marking, not touching, just measuring the space between his work and Tommy's. Samuel exhales through his nose, a quiet sound almost lost in the hangar's ambient noise. "They scratch messages inside panels sometimes," he offers. "Things too raw for official logs." He taps a specific spot near the fuel regulator. When Krillix peers closer, faint Zalarian glyphs appear, likely etched with a claw tip during some midnight repair session. The translation pops up in Krillix's vision after a brief lag. "Forgive our blindness." No signature, just a date 6 days after Kepler's final engagement. Samuel moves to the port side, checking connection points with methodical care. He leaves Krillix alone with the discovery, granting privacy even in this shared space. The coffee cup nearest Krillix releases thin wisps of steam, its contents still untouched. Krillix runs a claw along the panel's edge. The metal feels different tonight, not just an alloy to service, but a living testament. He reaches for the micro engraver still lying on the workbench. With careful strokes, he adds 3 Zalarian numerals beneath his initials, the standard designation for ongoing. Samuel returns as Krillix finishes. He doesn't praise the addition, just nods toward the thrusters. Needs another quarter turn counterclockwise. His tone suggests they could be discussing any routine adjustment, not the unspoken conversation happening through metal and memory. Krillix reaches for the wrench. His movements come easier now. The tool's weight familiar in his grasp. As he makes the adjustment, his forearm brushes against Tommy's initials. Brief contact between past and present, student and teacher, living and lost. The calibration completes with a satisfying click. Samuel checks the readings, then taps the access panel twice before sealing it. A mechanics ritual, one Krillix has seen him perform countless times these past weeks. Somewhere in the hangar's depths, a veteran laughs at some shared joke. The sound carries through the cavernous space, mingling with the scent of engine oil and the faint metallic tang of freshly polished alloy. Krillix picks up the coffee at last. The liquid has cooled to drinking temperature. He hesitates, then lifts the cup slightly toward Samuel in a gesture his own instructors might recognize, the Zalarian equivalent of understood. Samuel returns the motion with his half-empty mug. No ceremonial words follow. They drink in silence as the night shift carries on around them, the Hellcat's shadow stretching long across the deck plating. By morning, 21 new names wait beside the thruster housing. The 22nd remains unengraved but present in the careful way Krillix handles his tools. No longer the arrogant pilot, but someone who's learned to listen to what metal can teach. The unveiling ceremony begins at dawn with the sort of quiet dignity only veterans understand, not the blaring fanfare of victory parades, but the soft whir of anti-grav lifts lowering 12 refurbished fighters into formation. Each hull gleams under the artificial sunrise projectors, their polished surfaces throwing light across ranks of mixed cadets standing at attention. Krillix stands slightly apart from both Zalarian and human contingents. His position defies protocol, not among officers, not with enlisted, but just outside the mechanics' cordon where Samuel Brennan waits with grease still under his fingernails. The crisp new maintenance insignia on Krillix's uniform catches the light differently than his old pilot wings ever did. The first notes of the memorial hymn rise from a single Trilaxian breath horn. Every species hears something different in those tones. Human ears catch a naval shanty. Zalarian auditory processors translate it as a Stormland's dirge. Krillix's mandibles tense slightly when he recognizes the melody's origin. Kepler evacuation channel's final clear signal before static took over. Commander Okonkwo steps forward to begin the ritual unveiling. The ranks of cadets brace in unison, human backs straightening, Zalarian crests raising until one trainee near the front hesitates. A young human from Third Wing glances sideways at her Zalarian counterpart. Their elbows bump, a tiny breach in protocol unnoticed by most. Krillix sees it. So does Samuel. The moment passes. Okonkwo grips the ceremonial tarp's release cord. Her claws extend, then pause mid-motion. Instead of pulling, she turns her head just enough to catch Samuel's eye across the deck. A silent question hangs between them. Samuel removes his grease-stained cap. The gesture seems insignificant until every veteran mechanic follows suit, human, Zalarian, Trilaxian. Each bare head or exposed crest a quiet rebellion against regulation dress code. Okonkwo's nostrils flare in what might be approval. She nods once before yanking the cord. The tarp slides free in a whisper of fabric. Hellcat 77 stands revealed at the formation's center, its battle scars left deliberately unpolished for today. The difference is startling. Where other memorial ships gleam, this one bears its history raw. Blackened plasma streaks, patched hull breaches, a silhouette where Tommy's wingman should have been. Krillix's cranial ridges flush pale. His claws twitch toward his discarded pilot insignia, before remembering he no longer wears them. The formation holds its breath as Commander Okonkwo steps aside, ceding the podium space. Samuel doesn't move. He simply looks at Krillix and tilts his head toward the Hellcat. The walk across the hangar feels longer than 6 weeks of maintenance duty. Krillix's boots echo strangely on the deck plating. Behind him, a murmur runs through the Zalarian cadets. Their elite corps training never prepared them for this breach in ritual. He stops at attention before Hellcat 77. His first salute follows. Zalarian 7th Wing protocol, claws extended. Forearm angled precisely 42 degrees. Then deliberately he shifts position. The second salute lands at human naval standard. Palm inward, fingers straight, aimed not at the ship, but at Samuel Brennan. The hangar's acoustics carry the sharp intake of breath from the Zalarian delegation. Cadets exchange glances. Older officers remain stone-faced, except for Okonkwo, whose secondary eyelids blink slowly as she files the gesture away for future consideration. Samuel returns the salute with a mechanic's practicality. His palm bears the calluses of decades spent gripping tools rather than flight controls. But the angle is perfect. Around them, veterans nod. Some humans mimic the hybrid gesture. A few Zalarians try it with less precision. Krillix activates his stream recorder with a thought. The title appears in both languages. What We Forgot, The 12,000 and The Man Who Remembers. The camera drones rise silently, capturing not just the ceremony but the repaired thruster housing where his initials now sit beside Tommy's. The fresh engravings along Hellcat 77's gun ports. The way Samuel's sleeve rides up to reveal a faded tattoo of coordinates matching Kepler's evacuation lanes. The comments explode, not with the derision or debate Krillix once cultivated, but with Zalarian apology glyphs, the ancient kind reserved for blood debts between clans. Hundreds scroll by before the first human words appear. Show me the names. An aide rushes forward with the ceremonial datapad, expecting Krillix to begin the official proceedings. Instead, he passes it to Samuel. The gesture surprises even Okonkwo, who hides her reaction by adjusting her uniform's neck seam. Samuel hesitates only a moment before accessing the manifest. His voice sounds rougher than usual when he reads the first name. Rodriguez Hernandez, Engineering Corps. From the crowd, a burly Trilaxian mechanic responds, Covered Sergeant Vell's Retreat. The next name comes from a Zalarian cadet whose vocalizer struggles with human phonetics. T. Trevor M. Mallory. A human medic calls back, carried 2 Zalarian children to evac. The roll call continues like this, names shouted across species lines, each answered with deeds rather than ranks or dates. Krillix finds himself speaking without planning to. Thomas Brennan. His voice cracks on the human syllables. Every mechanic in the crowd responds as one. Made the corridor. The words hang suspended like the morning light catching on Hellcat 77's battle scars. Somewhere in the ranks, the same cadet who earlier bumped elbows now stands fully turned toward her Zalarian counterpart. No one calls her on it. Krillix stream stats spike as footage of the hybrid salute spreads through fleet channels. By midday, 17 junior officers will attempt their own variations. By week's end, the gesture appears in training manuals under emergency protocol. Within a month, an entire graduating class will use it during commissioning ceremonies. Palms angled just so. Honors rendered not to rank, but to service. But now, in this moment, there is only Samuel's steady voice reading names, the occasional rustle of uniforms as cadets shift their stance, and the way the hangar's lighting makes freshly polished metal look almost like liquid gold. The transfer request sits untouched on Commander Okonkwo's desk for 3 standard days. The insignia glows at the top, Elite Fighter Corps Headquarters priority assignment, while the body text remains conspicuously blank where most pilots list their preferred squadrons. Krillix claws leave faint impressions near the signature line, each indentation a silent battle fought over 16 syllables worth of words. He finally submits it with 2 attachments. His ceremonial flight wings and a single handwritten page titled, Honor Lives in Service. The essay contains 17 sentences, 1 for each day spent under Hellcat 77's bulk. The last line reads simply, I choose to remember. Headquarters processes the paperwork in under an hour. Most assume its efficiency until the carbon dating report surfaces. Every clerk from requisitions to archival pause to examine those surrendered wings. A junior lieutenant finds the microscopic engraving first. KVTB 612.2784, etched beneath the alloy finish. Samuel gets the notification during mid-shift calibration checks. His tablet pings with the reassignment order just as his fingers brush over the thruster housing, where Krillix's initials now sit beside Tommy's. The screen displays his new title, Supervising Officer, Maintenance and Memorial Division, Cross-Species. He powers the device off without acknowledging the promotion, but when Krillix arrives at 0600 next morning, Samuel's already laid out 2 sets of tools. One human issue, the other modified for Zalarian grip width. Their first project sits shrouded in Hangar 7's repair bay. The derelict Zalarian scout craft hasn't flown since before Kepler. Its hull pitted with the kind of damage only comes from running blockade lines. Krilox hesitates at the access panel. This particular model was his training vessel at the Academy. The serial number matches the one Tommy Brennan's wrench was salvaged from. Samuel watches the recognition dawn. He hands Krilox a hydrospanner without comment. The tool's grip bears fresh Zalarian glyph engravings. Still learning in the old dialect, sunlight filters through the hangar's upper windows as they work. Krilox finds 6 human modifications within the first hour. Jury-rigged life support, spliced power couplings, even a navigation console where someone carved human numerals beside the standard Zalarian readouts. Each discovery makes his claws retract slightly further. Samuel catches him staring at one particular weld seam along the starboard hull. "We couldn't read your repair codes," he says, running a thumb over the mismatched alloys. "So we marked them in ways both could understand." The weld forms a crude winged dagger shape, visible only if you know where to look. The work progresses quietly. Neither speaks much beyond necessary technical exchanges. Krilox consults ancient Zalarian maintenance manuals. Samuel references handwritten notebooks from Kepler's aftermath. Their tools clink against the hull in alternating rhythms, Zalarian speed calibrations followed by human precision torque adjustments. At lunch, Judith Brennan Chang delivers 2 ration packs. She lingers by the scout craft's cockpit, fingers tracing a particular scratch on the canopy. "Tommy sat here 3 hours waiting for rescue," she says. "Kept telling jokes over comms to keep the shot-down Zalarian pilots conscious." Her sleeve rides up, revealing the tattoo Krilox now recognizes, Zalarian numerals mixed with human dates. He examines the canopy closer. Faint markings appear near the edges, not damage but engravings. The translation comes slow. "Hold on, friends. We see your lights." Dated 2 days before Kepler's final engagement. Samuel pauses his work on the engine array. "Hull's not the only thing needing restoration," he says, nodding toward the mess of wires behind the comms panel. Zalarian tech, but human adapted after wartime shortages. Krilox's claws make quick work of the access panel. Inside, someone has left a data chip wedged between circuits. Ancient by current standards, but still functional. When he slots it into the scout's antiquated reader, 17 voices spill out. Human and Zalarian pilots trading coordinates over crackling channels. The final entry shows Tommy's vocal signature. "All birds form on Scout Vel's position. We're getting them home." The microphone picks up the Zalarian sergeant's responding hiss. Not anger, but the closest their species comes to a laugh. "Little brother leads today." Samuel exhales sharply through his nose. He reaches past Krilox to adjust the gain on an overloaded relay. His hand trembles slightly, barely noticeable unless you've spent weeks watching him perform micron precision welds. The motion dislodges decades of dust from the console, revealing more carvings beneath, crew names in both languages, each followed by dates marking when they made it to evacuation ships. Krilox hesitates, then adds 2 new entries with his micro-engraver. The first reads TB with today's date. The second simply says KV. No numerals, no modifiers, just initials beside a Zalarian proverb about found brothers. They work through second shift without calling it in. By nightfall, the scout craft's engines hum at standby capacity for the first time in years. The sound draws veterans from across Hangar 7, humans who remember patching these vessels mid-battle, Zalarians who flew them through hell. No one remarks on how the cockpit's newly polished surfaces now reflect both their faces equally. Samuel powers down the test sequence last. He lingers by the thruster array, fingers brushing the spot where human and Zalarian alloys merge. Krilox watches him straighten suddenly, as if remembering something. The older man rummages through his toolbox and extracts an ancient hydrospanner, Tommy's original salvage from this very ship. He hands it to Krilox without ceremony. The grip fits perfectly in Zalarian hands. Someone has recently polished away centuries of grime to reveal the original markings. A winged dagger beside a stormburst sigil. Headquarters will file the transfer paperwork tomorrow. The official record will note Krilox Varine's new rank, Maintenance Officer 2nd Class, and his reassignment to Memorial Division indefinitely. What won't appear in any report is the way he holds that wrench just slightly differently now, or how Samuel watches approvingly without needing to say why. Some restorations require no documentation beyond the work itself. The change begins with a single line in the revised Zalarian Academy Handbook, Chapter 14, Subsection 3. Survey of Interspecies Military History, required. The new module includes schematics of modified human-Zalarian hybrid ships, recordings of joint distress calls during the Kepler evacuations, and footage of mixed flight crews jury-rigging repairs. Halfway through the course material, cadets encounter an unedited security feed from Hangar 7. 1 minute and 47 seconds of Samuel Brennan polishing Hellcat 77, while Krillix Vereen watches silently. There's no narration, just the rhythmic sound of cloth on metal. 6 sectors away, maintenance crews start self-segregating less. Human technicians pass hydrospanners to Zalarian apprentices without hesitating first to adjust the grip settings. Trilaxian welders save their best alloy patches for whichever ship needs them most, regardless of whose insignia marks the hull. The shift happens gradually, like metal fatigue, invisible until suddenly something holds together differently than before. Krillix's new streams gain unexpected traction. Gone are the sleek pilot's harness and polished cockpit backdrops. Now his camera drones hover over workbenches as he interviews veterans from both sides. The segments run under the title Forgotten Heroes, each focusing on some overlooked act of cross-species ingenuity. When Fleet Command notices ratings surpassing official recruitment broadcasts, they quietly increase his equipment budget. Judith Brennan Chang helps design the memorial database. The interface puzzles the programming team at first. Why include a feature showing how widely each survivor's story has been shared across species lines? 6 weeks later, they understand. A notification pings whenever a Zalarian cadet accesses a human engineer's service record, or when a human medic researches a Zalarian doctor's field modifications. The system doesn't track views. It tracks connections. Mikhail Vulov volunteers to train mixed crews on antique thruster systems. His prosthetics no longer draw stares, not after footage circulates of him demonstrating emergency repair techniques using his mechanical knee joints as impromptu calibration tools. The Zalarians learn human hand signals. The humans master basic Zalarian scent marking for hazard warnings. Neither realizes they're adopting each other's practices until the first time a crisis drill runs smoothly, without translation software. The ripple reaches civilian sectors. A documentary crew filming near Hangar 7 captures incidental footage of 2 mechanics, one human, one Zalarian, passing a wrench back and forth 3 times until they settle on a comfortable grip for both. The clip trends galaxy-wide within hours. Comment sections flood with similar anecdotes. A human barista remembering a Zalarian regular's preferred caffeine ratio. A Zalarian teacher accommodating human students' need for fragrance-free learning spaces. Small things, ordinary things. The kind of details no one remarks on until their absence becomes conspicuous. Back at the academy, instructors notice cadets developing hybrid rituals. Human-style handshakes merge with Zalarian claw taps to form new greetings. No one decrees these changes. They simply happen. Like the way Samuel's particular polishing technique spreads until even Trilaxians buff their hulls in those same slow, concentric circles. Krillix documents it all with the same intensity he once reserved for combat maneuvers. His channel's most viewed episode features Commander Okonkwo describing how she approved the interspecies history module and paused mid-interview when her aide brought coffee prepared exactly to Samuel Brennan's preferences. The commander's crest flattens slightly on camera as she realizes when this knowledge must have been exchanged. Quarterly reports show surprising data points. Maintenance efficiency rises 17% in mixed crews. Voluntary cross-training applications triple. An entire graduating class selects joint human-Zalarian squadrons as their first posting preference, breaking centuries-old academy records. The real change lives in smaller moments. The way a human mechanic now pauses before touching any memorial vessel, claws or not. How young Zalarian pilots unconsciously adopt Samuel's habit of addressing ships as if they're listening. The quiet understanding when veterans from both species gather near Hellcat 77, not for ceremonies but simply to polish some overlooked detail while trading stories they once considered secrets. One evening, long after second shift, Samuel finds a package outside his quarters. Inside lies a Zalarian pilot's harness, Not ceremonial garb, but a well-worn flight suit modified for maintenance work. The breast pocket holds 2 items: Tommy's original wrench and a data chip containing every Forgotten Heroes episode. The accompanying note bears Krilluk's precise glyphs. Still learning. Always will be. Fleet historians will later debate exactly when the shift occurred. Some point to the Academy curriculum changes. Others cite Krilluk's viral streams. A few stubborn traditionalists insist it began that first day in Hangar 7, when a human mechanic's quiet dignity outshone any warrior's boast. But down in the maintenance bays, where grease and metal tell truths no report can capture, they know better. The real turning point came when people stopped seeing transformation as something to declare and started treating it as something to do, tool by tool, scar by scar, quiet act of understanding by quiet act of understanding. The ripple continues outward, imperceptibly most days, like alloy under polishing cloths, like engines warming to familiar hands, like history rewritten one honest moment at a time. The hatchlings cluster around Hellcat 77's landing gear, their small claws clicking against the deck plating. Krilluk watches them from the workbench, his own hands busy adjusting the straps on miniature polishing harnesses. The smallest one, barely old enough for her first molt, keeps sneaking glances at Samuel Brennan where he kneels by the starboard thruster array. At 73, the human moves slower than he once did, but his fingers still find every stress fracture without needing diagnostics. Father. The eldest hatchling tugs Krilluk's sleeve. Her cranial ridges flush the pale blue of curiosity. Why do we maintain primitive human craft? She pronounces the last words carefully, mimicking some instructor's phrasing. A younger sibling chitters agreement, already reaching for the nearest power buffer. Samuel doesn't look up from his work, but his shoulders tense just enough for veteran eyes to notice. The scar along his right forearm, a long-absent Trilaxian welder's parting gift, glistens under the hangar lights. He spent 20 Memorial Days explaining the ship to mixed crews but never to hatchlings. Krilluk sets down the harness. His claws extend slightly before retracting, a gesture the eldest recognizes as his thoughtful pause. Instead of answering, he lifts her onto his shoulder and crosses to the access panel where his own engravings still gleam beside Tommy's. The panel's interior tells its story in layers of scratched metal. Names, dates, repairs. The oldest marks have been polished nearly smooth by countless hands. Krilluk guides his daughter's claw to the 2 most recent additions, TB in perfectly straight lines, KV, slightly uneven beneath it. Because they chose us, he says. The hatchlings blink their nictitating membranes in confusion. Samuel exhales softly through his nose, the sound almost lost in the hangar's ambient noise. His calloused fingers continue buffing the thruster housing, following the same circular motions the children's father learned years ago. The youngest climbs onto Samuel's work stool. Her tiny claws skitter against its surface as she peers at the tool bench. Each hydrospanner and micro-sander has been modified. Human grips adjusted for Zellerian physiology, some bearing twin sets of initials. She selects a polishing cloth at random. It smells of citrus cleaner and something sharper beneath, ozone from old battle damage. Samuel glances up. His eyes crinkle at the corners when the hatchling mimics his motions, dragging the cloth across an undamaged section of wing plating. The gesture is all wrong, too much pressure, the wrong angle, but he doesn't correct her. Krilluk watches them for a moment before crouching beside his brood. See these? He taps a cluster of Zellerian glyphs near the fuel line. The markings are old, their edges softened by time. Human hands cut these after the war, to remember our fallen. The eldest squints. But their alphabet lacks. They learned. Krilluk opens an access panel the hatchlings could never reach. Inside, more names appear, these in troubled human script, misspelled but carefully rendered. Each corresponds to a particular repair point on the ship's schematic. He touches one with a claw tip. Sergeant Vell saved 12 human engineers during the Kepler bombardment. His voice drops to something quieter. Died holding the airlock so my uncle could evacuate. Samuel stands with a soft grunt, one hand bracing against the Hellcat's wing. The children flinch at the sound of his aging knees, but their father remains still. He knows this ritual, watches as Samuel retrieves a particular hydrospanner from the top shelf. The tool's grip bears tiny indentations from Zellerian claws, though its basic design remains human. The eldest hatchling gasps when Samuel presses it into her palms. The weight makes her arms dip slightly, but she holds on. Krilluk's breath catches. He's never told them how often he wielded that same wrench during training simulations, how its balance perfectly compensates for a Zolarian's off-center grip. Easy does it, Samuel murmurs as the hatchling approaches a minor scrape near the landing gear. His hand hovers near hers without touching, ready to guide but not interfere. Krillux remembers that posture from his first days in Hangar 7. The same patience, the same quiet insistence that understanding comes through doing. She makes the first stroke too hard. Metal screeches. The sound would have drawn glares in years past, but today the surrounding mechanics merely smile. A Trilaxian engineer even nods approval from her workstation. Krillux crouches behind his daughter. His larger hands engulf hers as he adjusts the angle. Like this, he whispers, guiding the tool with motions Samuel once taught him. The correction leaves a marginally better finish, still flawed but promising. Across the hangar, Commander Okonkwo observes from the observation deck. Her crest rises slightly when she notices the tableau. Old human and young Zolarians clustered around the Hellcat, their reflections warped equally by its curved plating. She taps a notation into her datapad, another curriculum revision perhaps, or simply a reminder to visit the memorial wall later. The youngest hatchling tugs Samuel's sleeve. "Why this ship?" she asks in halting standard. Her nose wrinkles at the acrid scent of ancient coolant stains. "It smells used." Samuel's laugh comes out rougher than intended. He wipes grease across his coveralls in a motion all three hatchlings immediately mimic. "Because metal remembers," he says simply, and lets them ponder that while reaching for the solvent. Krillux meets his gaze over the children's heads. No words pass between them, but the understanding hangs as tangible as the polishing rags and the engraved tools and the quiet hum of the hangar's ventilation system. By afternoon, the hatchlings have left 23 tiny fingerprints on freshly polished surfaces. The 24th remains pressed to the access panel, just beneath the paired initials where the eldest promised to return next season with steadier hands. As they depart, the youngest turns back. Her small voice carries across the hangar. "Do humans polish Zolarian ships too?" Samuel keeps working, but his shoulders relax into something resembling peace. Krillux answers for them both. The good ones do. The display case glows under precise museum lighting, its climate controls maintaining exactly 22 degrees Celsius and 40% humidity. Inside rests a single hydrospanner, its grip permanently darkened in curved patterns where two species' hands wore through the alloy. Tiny indentations mark where claws once stabilized each turn. The metal gleams despite its age, cared for by generations who never held it. A plaque mounted on brushed steel reads simply, "Honor lives in service." S. Brennan, T. Brennan, K. Vorine. No dates, no titles, no explanations. Visitors who tap the info panel see archival footage. Samuel teaching Krillux torque calibrations. Tommy's service portrait. Mixed crews polishing memorial ships. The timeline ends with Krilluk's final public address. "We remember not to mourn, but to maintain." A Zolarian girl barely tall enough to reach the case presses her palms against the glass. Her claws click softly, leaving fogged prints at exactly the height human children's fingerprints smudge neighboring exhibits. She tilts her head, studying the wrench's peculiar shape, that odd balance point where two grip styles converge. Her mother kneels beside her. The veteran's uniform bears twin insignia, modern fleet wings over an ancient Hellcat silhouette. "That tool saved 12,000 lives, she murmurs in Zolarian's private mode register. Her daughter's cranial ridges flush pale blue at the number. Nearby screens play interviews with mechanics from 17 species. They all demonstrate the same technique, those slow, concentric polishing motions Samuel invented decades ago. A Dravari engineer describes modifying the method for copper alloy. A Trilaxian talks about teaching it to hatchlings. The girl traces the engraved names with one claw. "Why 3?" she asks. Her voice carries through the hushed gallery, drawing smiles from elderly visitors who fielded this question before. Her mother touches her own wrist tattoo, faded fingerprints in mixed patterns. "Because some lessons take 3 lifetimes to learn," she says. The old pilot's gaze drifts to the exhibit's far wall where Hellcat 77 hangs suspended, its battle scars left deliberately unpolished for visitors to touch. Museum staff don't interfere when the girl scrapes her claw lightly along the case's base seam. Every child does this eventually, Zalarian, human, Trilaxian, seeking that faint resonance of metal on metal. The vibration resonates through the specialized glass at precisely 77 Hz, triggering a hidden projector. Tommy Brennan's face materializes above the wrench, young and grinning. The archival recording shows him demonstrating an emergency patch to Zalarian cadets, his hands moving with cheerful precision. See this groove? His voice crackles with static. That's for your claws to grip when the hydraulics fail. The cadets lean in, their spines flickering with surprise. The girl startles when Krillix appears beside Tommy in the hologram. His younger self adjusts the wrench in a cadet's hand. Pressure comes from here, he says, tapping the base of his own claw. The footage shimmers, revealing where generations of tiny hands have touched the same spot on the display. A museum docent pauses her rounds to watch. Her name tag reads J. Brennan Vereen above the winged dagger insignia. She touches her earpiece, not to answer a call but to quiet the old injury that still aches during atmospheric shifts. The motion draws the girl's attention. Did they really share one tool? The child asks, pointing at the case. Judith's smile starts at the corners of her eyes before reaching her mouth. She extracts a modern multi-species hydrospanner from her belt. Its grip adjusts automatically as she passes it between her hands. First human configuration, then Zalarian. Now we build them to share, she says. The adjustment mechanism bears a familiar inscription, still learning. The mother inhales sharply through her scent vents. Her daughter misses the reaction, too busy studying Judith's wrist tattoo, intertwined fingerprints over coordinates every veteran recognizes. Kepler's evacuation lanes. Judith pockets the tool and nods toward the museum's workshop wing. Want to try polishing? She asks. The question isn't casual. She checks her chronometer instinctively. 3:47 p.m. when Samuel always took his breaks to teach young mechanics. The girl looks to her mother, who hesitates only a second before nodding. As they follow Judith toward the active exhibits, other visitors shift aside to let them pass. No one comments on how the child walks exactly between human and Zalarian stride lengths, or how her mother's hand finds Tommy's initials on Hellcat 77's wing without looking. In the workshop, 3 polishing stations wait, human height, Zalarian stance, and a new hybrid model designed for varigrav species. Judith selects a cloth from the middle bin. Its fibers contain microscopic flecks from the original Hangar 7 rags, preserved and replicated for exactly this purpose. The girl accepts it solemnly. Her first strokes skid sideways across the practice plate, leaving uneven streaks. Judith doesn't correct her, just readjusts the sample's angle and says, "Try feeling for the scars first." The mother watches, her claws retracting and extending in unconscious rhythm with her daughter's attempts. Somewhere behind them, the museum's central chronometer chimes the hour in mixed tones, human bells layered with Zalarian resonance pulses. By closing time, the practice plate bears 19 decent strokes and 1 perfect arc where everything aligned. The girl's grip, her mother's whispered correction, Judith's steadying hand. They initial it together in the corner, 2 sets of Zalarian glyphs bracketing human letters. The night custodian finds it hours later when polishing his own section. He adds his Dravari clan mark beneath theirs, following a tradition no one remembers starting. When he powers down the workshop lights, the glow from the main gallery spills through the doorway, illuminating the case where Samuel's wrench rests, untouched but never still, surrounded by new generation's handprints on the glass. Conclusion. That moment in Hangar 7 wasn't just about an arrogant pilot and a patient engineer. It became something more. A lesson written in grease and metal, whispered through generations. The truth Samuel Brennan taught Krillix Vereen and all of us. Honor isn't in victory alone. It's in preserving what was sacrificed to get there. Consider the wrench in the museum case worn smooth by hands from 2 worlds. Some lessons outlast wars, languages, even lifetimes. Press like if you believe memory matters more than pride. And tell us which moment changed Krillix most. Let's discuss below. Krillix looks down at his hands. The irritated patches along his knuckles hadn't registered until now. He flexes his fingers, watching the light catch on fine scratches left by the engraving tool, microscopic grooves that mirror the ones on Samuel's wrench. As Judith walks away, she calls over her shoulder. Bring the Admiral's glyph tracing. He'll want to see how you've improved his teenage signature. The hangar's acoustics carry Samuel's soft grunt of amusement. Krillok stands very still, staring at the wall where two species' memories now share the same careful layers of paint. Somewhere behind him, a Trilaxian welder begins humming an old Kepler-era marching tune, one that human and Zalarian forces reportedly sang together during the worst siege. Commander. Okonkwo chooses that moment to enter on her standard inspection rounds. Her crest flattens in surprise when she spots Krillix at the memorial wall, then lifts fully when she recognizes the glyph work. She says nothing, just touches her own shoulder insignia once before moving on, her bootsteps unusually quiet against the deck plating. By shift's end, 18 names glow fresh on the wall. The 19th, a faint outline only Krillix seems to notice, waits beneath his claw tips, ready for next time. The holographic projectors hum to life in Hangar 7's central bay, their emitter arrays flickering as they warm up. Dr. Sterling adjusts his ancient data tablet with fingers that shake slightly, not from age, but from the weight of what he's about to show. The air smells suddenly of ionized particles and something sharper, like the lingering ozone before a thunderstorm. The first images resolve in 3 dimensions above them, not the sanitized tactical overviews from official debriefs, but raw cockpit footage stitched together from 17 different sources. The Battle of Kepler unfolds in jagged shards of perspective, the edges of each feed tinged with static from damaged recorders. Krillix stands rigid beside Samuel, his claws retracted so tightly they dig into his palms. The projection shows human Hellcat fighters vectoring toward the enemy line, not in attack formation, but in scattered defensive patterns. Their outdated shields glow orange under concentrated fire as they position themselves between Zalarian evacuation ships and the advancing fleet. A particular feed stabilizes in the center of the display. Hellcat 77's cockpit camera shows a young pilot's hands moving across controls, Tommy Brennan adjusting his throttle with quick, practiced motions. The audio crackles with overlapping comms chatter, half drowned by proximity alarms. Someone shouts a warning about engine temperatures. Samuel doesn't need to watch the screen. He stares instead at the hangar floor, tracking the play of holographic light across the scuffed deck plates. His jaw works slightly as if rehearsing words he'll never get to say. The footage jumps a sudden lurch as Hellcat 77 banks hard. Tommy's voice cuts through the noise, young and startlingly calm. Covering Vector 3, all birds divert. 16 other pilots acknowledge in rapid succession. The camera catches flashes of Zalarian transports streaming toward jump points, their engines flaring under protective fire. Then the perspective shifts again. A Zalarian gunship's external cameras capture the crucial moment, the enemy flagship pivoting to intercept the last civilian convoy. Tommy's Hellcat peels away from formation, not a tactical retreat, not a regrouping maneuver. A deliberate solitary arc that positions his straining engines between the flagship's guns and 3 packed hospital ships. Samuel exhales through his nose. That's no tactical maneuver. His thumb brushes against his wrist where a pilot's watch used to sit. That's my boy. The projection ripples as multiple feeds overlap. Tommy's cockpit alerts scream about critical damage. The enemy flagship's targeting systems pulse crimson. Someone on the Zalarian gunship comms pleads for retreat vectors. What happens next unfolds in microsecond increments across different camera angles. Tommy's throttle advancing past safety locks, his damaged fighter angling not away but through the enemy's firing solution. The explosion ruptures across the holographic space in terrible silence. The flagship's port batteries fall dark as debris from the impact tears through their power relays. Dr. Sterling freezes the playback there. The image holds, a perfect corridor of safe transit carved through enemy lines by that single explosion. The last Zalarian transport slipped through the gap like beads through a broken necklace. No one speaks. The hangar's usual ambient noise has disappeared, swallowed by the weight of what they've just witnessed. Even the ventilation systems seem to hold their breath. Krillix's implant calculates the numbers before he can stop it. The tactical overlay projects across his vision, civilian casualties prevented, 14,382. Military assets preserved, 76%. Statistical likelihood of convoy survival without that maneuver, 3.2%. The data burns behind his retinas, far brighter than the hologram. Dr. Sterling taps his tablet. The projection shifts to aftermath footage. Rescue teams pulling survivors from wreckage, medical frigates overflowing with wounded. Human medics working on Zalarian patients. Zalarian engineers jury-rigging human life support systems. Samuel finally looks up. His gaze finds Hellcat 77 in the shadows beyond the projection, its repaired hull gleaming faintly under the holographic battle's reflected light. The pitted metal along its starboard side matches exactly the damage pattern from the frozen footage. Commander Okonkwo breaks the silence from her position near the doors. She doesn't speak, just taps her wrist display. A new set of numbers joins Krillik's tactical assessment. Crew manifests from the saved hospital ships, now personal files in the fleet database. Children born to parents who made it to evacuation zones. Graduating classes at Zalarian academies that wouldn't have existed without that corridor. Krillik's mandibles hang slightly open. His breath comes in shallow bursts that fog the projection edges where he stands too close. His claws twitch toward the frozen image of Tommy's last maneuver, stopping just short of disrupting the light field. Dr. Sterling powers down the emitters. The battle winks out between heartbeats, leaving only Hangar 7's work lights and the quiet hum of ongoing repairs. The smell of ozone fades, replaced by the familiar sense of lubricant and metal polish. Samuel moves first. He walks to Hellcat 77 and runs a hand along its wing, the same path he's polished 1,000 times before. Only now his fingers linger on each repaired impact point, matching them to remembered explosions from the playback. Krillik remains statue still at the hologram's former center. His eyes track the symbolic squadron flags hanging above the memorial wall, dozens of them from mixed units, all tattered from actual combat. One in particular draws his attention. A human standard fused with Zalarian stormburst sigils where shrapnel tore through both fabrics mid-battle. Dr. Sterling packs his tablet away without comment. The click of its case sealing seems to wake Krillik from his trance. The young pilot turns toward Hellcat 77, his posture no longer that of an elite aviator, but of someone standing at the edge of an unmarked grave. His claws slowly extend, then retract again, not in threat but in something resembling salute. Across the hangar, Mikhail Vulov powers up his welding torch. The blue flame catches every veteran eye for a moment before they return to their duties. No one remarks on how Krillik spends the next 4 hours polishing the same 3 square feet of Hellcat 77's fuselage, his motions precise as a meditative ritual, or how Samuel works beside him without speaking, passing tools whenever needed. By shift's end, 19 new names wait to be engraved beside the freshly polished sections, all Zalarian, all survivors of the hospital ships. The 20th remains unspoken between them, etched instead in the silence of shared understanding. The maintenance log lies open across Hellcat 77's wing, its pages protected by thin polymer sheeting, but still yellowed at the edges. Samuel flips past early entries, routine inspections, minor recalibrations, until he reaches the Kepler-era records. The handwriting changes here, becomes messier, sometimes smudged with substances Krillik's olfactory sensors identify as engine grease, mixed with trace amounts of human blood. "Read that one," Samuel says, tapping an entry dated 3 weeks post-battle. The note reads, R. Hernandez, replaced starboard thruster panel, Sergeant Vell cover position. Beneath it, scribbled in different ink, he covered Tommy's retreat when comms went down. Krillik's claws contract slightly. He knows that battlefield annotation style. Zalarian wing leaders use similar shorthand to record debts between squadrons. His implant cross-references the date with orbital reconstruction timelines. This repair happened during the chaotic period when both fleets were piecing together survivors, working under constant threat of renewed attack. Escape pods, Samuel says. He rotates the tool to show where the metal bent and rebent multiple times. Zalarian hatch mechanisms jam under combat stress. Krillik knows this flaw. It's drilled into all cadets, a design quirk that killed hundreds during the Kepler engagements. His own uncle perished that way. A shadow falls across the table as Mikhail Vulov maneuvers his wheelchair into place. He grabs the wrench with practiced ease, demonstrating the motion on an imaginary hatch. Twist counterclockwise after the second click, he mutters. His prosthetics flex unconsciously, mirroring the remembered strain. Lisa reaches across to adjust Krillik's grip on his own utensil. Hold it like this next time. Better torque. The positioning happens to match the way one would grip Samuel's modified tool. An alert pings from the hangar's medical bay. Lisa stands, stretching her bad shoulder with a wince. She leaves her tray behind, but not before pointing to another section of the Hellcat. Watch for stress fractures near the intake vents. We jury-rigged those seals with oxygen tank gaskets after the proper parts got diverted. She pauses. To Zalarian evac ships. The welding veteran finally looks up. His neck bears the telltale speckling of radiation burns, field medicine at its most desperate. Worked 37 hours straight modifying those gaskets, he says. His voice rasps in a way that suggests damaged vocal cords. Your medics needed them more. Krillix implant screens a data request about human oxygen toxicity thresholds. The numbers appear alongside comparative analyses of Zalarian respiratory needs. Samuel picks up the conversation seamlessly, as if discussing ship repairs rather than triage decisions. Had to recast 6 injector nozzles to handle your fuel mixtures when the supply lines got hit. His thumb brushes over the wrench's worst bend. Lost 2 good engineers learning the hard way about Zalarian combustion rates. Around the hangar, veterans from a dozen species continue their lunches. Many wear hybrid gear, Trilaxian safety goggles with human-made corrective lenses, Dravari wrist guards modified to fit Zalarian anatomy. The patchwork tells its own story of shared crises and stopgap solutions. A junior mechanic walks by carrying a Zalarian diagnostic module spliced into a human interface case. Krillix recognizes his academy's insignia, laser-etched beside the power switch. Lisa's voice carries from the medbay doorway. Oh, and Voreen? That primitive bone saw? She holds up her left arm, rotating it to show muscle movement under scar tissue. Your people's field manuals adopted its design last year. Works better on mixed-species trauma cases. Samuel stands, collecting tools with the ease of long practice. He doesn't glance at Krillix when he speaks. Tools don't need to be advanced. Just need to be used right. Krillix watches the old wrench disappear back into the toolbox beside equally battered counterparts. His lunch sits mostly untouched except where Lisa had rearranged his grip on the utensil. The metal retains the warmth of his hand. Temporary, like all imprints, but real while it lasts. At the far end of the hangar, Commander Okonkwo observes through the observation deck's one-way glass. She makes no comment as her aide records the scene. Veteran mechanics passing tools across species lines, a Zalarian pilot studying his hands with new awareness, and Hellcat 77's polished surface reflecting it all without judgment. The shift bell rings. Work resumes. By day's end, 17 new names will wait for engraving beside the newly polished sections. The pneumatic doors whisper open, and Judith Brennan Chang steps into Hangar 7 carrying 2 cans of enamel paint. Their metallic blue gleam matches the Hellcat's original squadron colors. She moves with the quiet efficiency of someone who knows her way around Starship maintenance decks, though the medical insignia on her uniform suggests she belongs elsewhere. Krillix freezes mid-polish. His cranial ridges flush the pale gray of apprehension. This close to Samuel, the Zalarian body language is impossible to miss. He sets down his microfiber cloth with precise care, claws retracted flat against his palms. The gesture reads as non-threatening by any species standards. Judith studies him for 3 heartbeats. Then she extends a paint can. Hold this steady while I mix. Not a question. The ladder creaks as she climbs to where Tommy's name leads the memorial wall's casualty list. The letters have faded slightly from 3 years of hangar lights and cleaning solvents. Krillix braces the ladder's base with all 4 hands, his claws automatically adjusting to lock the struts in place. He'd think this is funny, Judith says without looking down. Her brush moves in firm strokes over the first letter. Tommy collected unlikely friends like spare parts. The fresh paint catches the light differently than the original, deeper, richer somehow, like it contains flecks of stardust. Down on the work floor, Samuel continues calibrating Hellcat 77's thruster array. His attention stays on the torque wrench, but the rhythm of his breathing changes when Judith laughs at something. The sound carries, warm and conversational, as she descends to switch paint cans. Krillix still hasn't spoken. His secondary eyelids blink rapidly when Judith pulls a small hollow projector from her pocket. The image resolves between them. Tommy Brennan slinging an arm around a young Zalarian cadet, both grinning despite their battered flight suits. Ice crystals cling to Tommy's eyebrows, and the Zalarian's shoulder spines are chipped at the tips. Kepler Winter Campaign markings. His squadron had 3 Zalarians. Judith taps the projection. It wobbles, sending light scattering across Krillick's faceplates. They called him Little Brother, even though he outranked 2 of them. The Zalarian in the holosports, an insignia Krillick knows well. 4th Wing's Stormburst emblem, now worn by Fleet Admiral Kivas himself. The revelation settles between them like slow drifting snow. That cocky young cadet grew up to become Krillick's tactical instructor, the one who drilled interspecies coordination protocols into an entire generation of pilots. Judith watches, understanding dawn. She swaps paint cans again, her sleeve riding up to reveal a wrist tattoo. 2 sets of fingerprints intertwined, one distinctly human, the other bearing the dermal ridges of Zalarian physiology. Told you he collected friends. Krillick's nasal vents flare at the chemical scent of drying enamel. His implant pings with recognition. The pigment formula exactly matches 4th Wing's ceremonial colors, the kind used only for commemorative plaques. He looks from the hologram to the memorial wall, where 17 other names now glow under fresh paint in various squadron hues. Across the hangar, Samuel finally glances up. His eyes track Judith's progress along the wall before dropping to the hologram still hovering near Krillick's chest. Something unreadable passes across his face. Not grief exactly, nor pride, but some alloy of both tempered by time. Judith caps the paint. Help me with the stencil. She unfolds a thin polymer sheet covered in Zalarian battle glyphs, the names of Tommy's wingmates. Her fingers hesitate over the first character. I can pronounce them, she admits, but my claws aren't sharp enough for the finer cuts. Krillick takes the tool she offers. It's human-made but modified, the tip narrowed to accommodate Zalarian script precision. His first stroke wavers slightly before finding its rhythm. The glyphs take shape under his claws, slightly bolder than the surrounding human lettering but no less carefully wrought. The work proceeds in companionable silence. Judith holds the stencil steady. Krillick traces glyphs. Samuel keeps working on the Hellcat, though his tools move slower now, as if listening to some distant conversation. When they reach the last name, Kivas's original cadet designation, Judith pauses. He visited last year, brought Zalarian sealant for the gunport patches. She nods toward where Samuel labors. Said Tommy would have teased him for finally admitting human alloy bonds better in cryo conditions. Krillick's claws retract slightly. His instructor had never mentioned maintaining human ships, though the man did insist on teaching antique repair techniques the other officers called obsolete. Those particular lessons had strict grading curves, pass or fail, no partial credit, just like battlefield repairs. Judith steps back to survey their work. The freshly painted names gleam in Hangar 7's lights, human and Zalarian characters flowing together like interdocking spacecraft. She pockets the hologram, but not before Krillick sees the date stamp, 1 week before Kepler's final engagement. Come by medbay later, she tells him, gathering her supplies. That solvent rash on your hands needs treatment. Zalarian dermis reacts badly to human polishing compounds after 6 continuous hours. The chamber digests this in silence. Even Krillick stops fidgeting. He stares at Tommy's date of birth and date of death flashing side by side, 21 years apart to the day. His implant pings with a cross-reference it shouldn't be able to access. Zalarian casualty reports from Kepler, particularly the 14,000 saved during the human diversion. Okonkwo leans forward. You'll report to Hangar 7 at 600 tomorrow. Full structural maintenance protocols. Judging by Krillick's expression, this lands worse than any demotion. Maintenance duty carries no honor in Zalarian caste hierarchy. To them, rehabilitation is something done to broken machinery, not wayward pilots. Samuel retrieves the logbook. He pauses near Krillick's on his way out. First lesson, he murmurs. That dent you laughed at? My boy made it climbing into his cockpit for the last time. The chamber doors seal behind him. Okonkwo remains seated while others leave, watching Krillick process something his cultural framework lacks vocabulary for. His hand drifts toward his own flight insignia, a gesture he's made 1,000 times before with pride, then falters halfway. Down in Hangar 7, Samuel adjusts the stained polishing cloth over the Hellcat's wing. The maintenance schedule on his tablet already has a new line added: KV orientation procedures in cramped, precise handwriting. He hesitates, then types 6 unfamiliar Zalarian characters underneath it, the first words Krillix ever spoke on his now-deleted stream. The system auto-translates them. Proof of superiority. Samuel deletes the translation but keeps the original script. On the projection screen above him, Kepler footage loops silently, human and Zalarian ships burning side by side in the black. The maintenance jumpsuit hangs wrong on Krillix's frame, sleeves straining over his bicep spurs, the collar gaping around his cranial ridge. He stands stiffly at Hangar 7's service entrance, claws retracted as if the fabric might tear at a touch. Samuel watches from the workbench, noting how the young pilot keeps adjusting the insignia patch that isn't there anymore. He selects a micro sander from the rack, tests its balance, then crosses the floor. Without ceremony, he presses the tool into Krillix's upper right hand and points to Hellcat 77's undercarriage. The plasma scarring there still glows faintly after all these years, the alloy permanently altered by temperatures that would melt modern ships. "Start here." Samuel drags a thumb along one particularly vicious burn. "Gentle strokes, you're erasing battle damage, not creating it." Krillix's mandibles flex. He kneels awkwardly, unused to postures that don't involve flight harnesses. The sander trembles slightly in his grip, an organic tell-no simulator ever prepared him for. Across the bay, mechanics pause just long enough to note the new recruit before returning to their tasks. Mikhail Vulov rolls up in his wheelchair, prosthetic legs strapped in their travel mounts. He tosses a cleaning rag at Krillix's knees without breaking conversation with a Tralaxian welder. The rag unfolds midair, revealing faded bloodstains around the edges. It lands precisely where Krillix would need it when the first polishing phase ends. The Zalarian hesitates. He activates the sander at full power, an instinctive show of competence, and immediately gouges a fresh scar beside the original burns. The sound makes 3 veterans wince. A Drivari loader mutters something in guttural tones that needs no translation. Samuel crouches beside him. His calloused hand closes over Krillix's wrist, adjusting the pressure. Together they trace the outline of a much older repair. Like this. Samuel guides the tool in slow overlapping arcs. They earned our care. Up close, Krillix smells the older man's soap, pine tar, and something citrus-based. Utterly ordinary except for where it mingles with Hellcat 77's unique scent of ionized metal and old fire. Krillix's nasal vents flare. His secondary eyelids blink rapidly as he notices the fine etchings beside each repair point. At first glance, they look like standard maintenance notations until his implant focuses. Names, dozens of them, in various scripts clustered around every scar. The starboard thruster bears 3 columns, human names in the leftmost, followed by Zalarian battleglyphs, then Tralaxian spiral script. Near the fuel intake, someone has carefully inscribed coordinates alongside a Drivari clan sigil. Krillix's own language appears more often than he expects, each set of characters precisely rendered despite their complexity. His sander stalls. The realization comes slowly: these aren't crew manifests. They're acknowledgments. Every name represents someone saved by that specific patch job. The portside armor plating alone holds nearly 200 inscriptions, their edges worn smooth by years of polishing. Samuel watches him connect the dots. He taps a particular cluster near the reactor housing. The names here show less wear than others. Tommy's squadron added these post-Kepler. His fingernail, blackened with permanent coolant stains, traces a Zalarian name at the center of the group. Sergeant Vell insisted we put his people here. Said it was tactical positioning. A nearby work light catches the fine scratches around each letter. Krillix's implant zooms in further, revealing minuscule variations in the engraving depth. Human hands cut these over multiple sessions, adding names whenever another survivor came forward. The most recent additions date from last month. Mikhail wheels by again, this time dangling a magnifier headset. Krillix fumbles it on, and the ship's surface resolves into a tapestry of microscopic details. Here, a human welder's fingerprint preserved in sealant. There, a Zalarian claw mark deliberately left unpolished near an emergency hatch. The entire hull tells overlapping stories in a language deeper than species or faction. Samuel stands, leaving Krillix to continue alone. He misses the exact moment understanding dawns, only sees the after effects in how the Zalarian's next polishing strokes slow to half speed. how his free hand hesitates before contacting any inscribed name. A commotion erupts near Hangar 7's main doors. Commander Okonkwo strides in with her usual escort, stopping short when she spots Krillux prone beneath the Hellcat. Her crest flattens slightly, the Zilarian equivalent of raised eyebrows, as she takes in the scene. The discarded magnifier, the carefully positioned rag, the way her former ace pilot now works with both sets of hands in perfect synchronization. Her comm badge chirps. She ignores it, watching longer than protocol requires before turning away. The officers follow, but not before one, a grizzled veteran with Kepler campaign pins, deliberately scuffs his boot near a floor grate. The resulting echo bounces off Hellcat 77's hull at the precise frequency Zilarian flight cadets use to signal "acknowledged" during silent running. Krillux freezes mid-polish. His cranial ridge flushes dark purple, then resettles to neutral gray. When he resumes work, both hands move together, one sanding, the other bracing against the hull exactly where Samuel had earlier. The contact point just happens to align with Sergeant Vell's name. Across the hangar, Samuel nods to no one in particular and picks up his own tools. The morning progresses in relative quiet, broken only by the occasional scrape of metal on metal and, eventually, the sound of Krillux humming an old Zilarian work chant under his breath. By lunch hour, 17 new names wait to be engraved beside the fresh polish. The lunch tray clatters as Lisa Oduya drops it onto the workbench next to Krillux. Her medical insignia still shows the pitting from shrapnel that nearly took her left eye 3 years ago. She chews methodically on some sort of protein cube while studying the Hellcat's starboard gun port. Pulled 2 Zilarians through there while it was on fire, she says around a mouthful. Krillux follows her gaze to the repaired section. The metal bears strange tool marks, jagged grooves no modern polisher would leave. Lisa taps one particular scar with her eating utensil. Human plasma cutter died mid-job. She wipes her hands on already stained scrubs. Had to finish with specimen retrieval saws from the medbay. A veteran human welder 2 seats down grunts affirmation without looking up from his ration pack. Krillux's implant identifies the tool Lisa referenced, a primitive bone saw from early planetary settlement days, completely unpowered. The kind his instructors mocked in field medicine courses. Lisa peels back her sleeve to show chemical burn scars that zigzag up to her elbow. Zilarian coolant. Your people's skin blistered differently. She nods toward Samuel. He modified 3 medkits to handle it. Used sterilization lasers as cautery tools. Samuel digs through his toolbox without comment. He extracts a wrench with strange notches filed into its jaw. When he lays it on the table, Krillux infrared vision picks up residual heat signatures along the modifications, evidence it's still used regularly despite being ancient by any standard. The cloth stays behind, draped over the cockpit rail like a pilot's forgotten glove. Neither human acknowledges when Krillux drone zooms in on the bloodstain barely visible near one hem. The stain forms a perfect fingerprint where Tommy once stanched a rookie's bleeding mid-flight. Impossibly, quietly, the Hellcat's interior maintenance light flickers green, just once under the cloth shadow. The system hasn't powered up in years. Down the line, Zilarian engineers exchange quiet gestures. Their youngest members don't understand until veterans tap their own memorial patches twice. Heartbeat rhythm, Krillux adjusts his streaming headset with one hand, while reaching for the Hellcat's wing with the other. His claws extend just enough to catch the hangar lights. A calculated display meant for his viewers. "Allow me to demonstrate proper maintenance technique," he announces. The drone camera zooms in tight on his approaching talons. 3 figures move at once. The Zilarian dockmaster lunges forward with a snarl. Mikhail Vulov's wheelchair repulsors whine as he pivots hard. A Trilaxian engineer drops her scanner with a metallic clang. But Samuel is already there, his torque wrench snapping up in a clean arc that freezes an inch from Krillux's wrist. The tool doesn't make contact. It doesn't need to. Every veteran in the hangar recognizes the stance, a flight deck marshal's intercept position, designed to block without escalation. Samuel's other hand stays braced against the Hellcat's fuselage, fingers splayed over Tommy's dent. "This isn't your history to handle." Samuel's voice stays low but carries across the silent hangar. Behind him, the memorial fighter's polished surfaces throw his reflection back 100 times. Krillux's mandibles twitch. His streaming overlay explodes with comments. Zalarian battleglyphs overlapping human curses, mod alerts flashing as reports spike. The camera catches the exact moment he realizes he's stumbled into something deeper than mockery. His nostrils flare at the scent of old solvent and something sharper beneath it. Ozone from overloaded conduits, perhaps, or the metallic tang of dried coolant that never quite washes out. He recovers fast. "Afraid I'll show your relic proper care?" The taunt lands flat in the weighted air. His claws retract slightly, a tell Samuel doesn't miss. Down the work line, a Dravari loader switches his cargo rig to standby. The power-down sequence echoes like a countdown. Krillok's drone pans to capture it, then jerks back as Samuel turns away. Instead of rising to the bait, Samuel wipes his wrench on a thigh rag and resumes polishing. His free hand drifts to a scorch mark below the Hellcat's gun sight. "Easy, girl," he murmurs. He doesn't know. The words aren't for Krillix. They're not even for the watching crowd. That same phrase appears 17 times in Tommy's maintenance logs, always scribbled beside particularly stubborn damage. The veterans recognize it. A few touch their own vessel's hulls. Krillix hesitates. His streaming stats plummet as thousands of viewers switch to other feeds. The remaining comment section bifurcates, half demanding he press the advantage, half flooding the chat with orbital coordinates Samuel would recognize as Kepler battle sites. Footsteps cut through the tension. Commander Okonkwo enters flanked by 2 tactical officers, her Zalarian crest raised to full display. She takes in the scene with one sweep of vertically slitted eyes. Samuel's calm polishing, Krillix aborted reach, the silent crowd. Her nostrils flare at the same metallic scent that gave Krillok's pause. No one speaks. The ventilation system kicks on, swirling motes of polishing dust into the light beams. Okonkwo's secondary eyelids blink once slowly as she accesses her implant's recording function. The playback glints in her vision. Security footage of this same hangar 3 years prior. Samuel bracing that same torque wrench against a collapsing bulkhead to buy Zalarian medics 12 extra seconds. She exhales through nasal vents and turns to Krillix. "Problem, pilot?" The question carries layers only veterans catch. A callback to Zalarian Flight Academy's first rule about pre-battle checks. Krillok flushes purple at the gaff. Samuel saves him. "Just discussing maintenance philosophy, Commander." He taps the Hellcat's hull twice, a mechanic's all clear. The gesture matches the one he used to signal safe passage through that ruptured bulkhead years ago. Okonkwo's posture shifts almost imperceptibly. Krillix finally recognizes the trap he's in. Swing at Samuel, and he looks like an aggressor. Back down, and he appears weak. The stream's remaining viewers sense it too. Commentary shifts to bets on his next move. His mandibles flex as he considers doubling down. Then he notices the wrench in Samuel's hand. Not standard issue. Not even modern. The grip bears the same winged dagger insignia as the memorial patch, worn smooth by decades of use. Krillok's implant pings, an automated identification request returning a match. Cadet issue Kepler era, salvaged from a downed Zalarian scout ship's emergency kit. The realization hits him the same moment Okonkwo's does. That's not just a tool. It's a relic that predates the war. Proof that some alliances started small and quiet long before treaties were signed. Samuel runs a thumb along the grip's worn grooves, tracing letters Krillix can't quite read from this angle. Okonkwo steps back, ceding space. Her officers follow suit. On Krillix's stream, the last holdout viewers abandon ship as he stands there, claw still half raised, caught between instinct and something unfamiliar. For the first time in his broadcasting career, he has nothing to say. The hangar's acoustics amplify the sound of Samuel's rag moving across metal. It's the only sound for 3 full breaths. Then the comm system crackles to life with an incoming shuttle alert and the spell breaks. Mechanics return to their stations. The dockmaster spits another wad of resin that steams between Krillix's boots before walking away. Krillix's drone powers down mid-transmission, cutting off the shot of Samuel's wrench laid carefully beside Tommy's blood-stained cloth. The last visible comment scrolls past before the feed dies. "He's not ignoring you, fool. He's teaching." The tribunal chamber hums with the low-frequency vibrations of multiple species shifting in their seats. Krillok stands at attention, mandibles clamped tight, expecting the familiar protocols. The demotion notice, the confiscated flight credentials, the standard Zalarian reprimand for defiling memorials. His peripheral vision tracks the scowling faces of officers from 6 different homeworlds, all arranged in the semicircular bench above him. Then the side door opens. Samuel Brennan walks in wearing freshly pressed coveralls, a maintenance log tucked under one arm. The sight makes several officers blink. Human disciplinary proceedings never include civilian witnesses. Samuel takes position beside Krillix without looking at him, sets the log on the evidence table and waits. Commander Okonkwo steeples her clawed fingers. This tribunal convenes to address violations of interspecies memorial accords, she begins. The holographic charge sheet floats between them. Disrespect to sacred relics, incitement, disruption of unity protocols. Samuel clears his throat. No charges necessary, Commander. He slides the log forward. The youngster just needs education. Krillix scoffs loud enough for the ventilation system to pick up. His cranial ridges flush darker when Samuel flips the log open to reveal not maintenance records but a service dossier. The header reads Brennan, Thomas J. above the winged dagger insignia. For 3 seconds, the chamber sees the same thing. A headshot of a grinning human cadet, 19 years old by the dating system, superimposed over his Hellcat schematics. Then the tactical display activates, projecting Kepler engagement patterns onto the chamber walls. Strands of light converge where Tommy's squadron broke formation, drawing enemy fire away from evacuation ships. Okonkwo watches Krillix's reaction as the footage rolls. She waits for the critical moment, the part where Tommy's Hellcat peels off toward the heavy cruiser. There's no audio, but every veteran in the room hears the transmission anyway. They've all accessed the declassified files. The projection freezes on the explosion's first frame. 6 weeks maintaining the fleet, Okonkwo announces. Under Brennan's supervision, several Zellarian delegates half-rise from their seats. One hisses through nasal vents, a breach of protocol, before Okonkwo silences them with a gesture. She taps her command bracelet, and the projection shifts to images from Hangar 7's security feeds. Here's Krillix mocking the memorial fighters. Here's Samuel polishing the dent. Here's the moment Krillix reached for the Hellcat, and the wrench that blocked him. The footage plays at half speed, zoomed in where Samuel's thumb had aligned precisely with the worn grooves of the tool's grip. The camera lingers on the tiny winged dagger etched there, the same insignia now glowing above. Tommy's service record. Our records show Cadet Brennan salvaged that wrench from a downed Zellarian scout, Okonkwo says. She looks directly at the protesters. 3 hours before intercepting the neutron wave meant for your dreadnought. A Trilaxian liaison exhales sharply through his spiracles. He points at the projection, specifically at a peripheral blip most observers would miss. The camera had caught it by accident. A Zellarian engineer in the hangar background, subtly adjusting her workbench to shield Samuel's polishing cloth from an overhead coolant leak. A towering alien pilot streams live to millions, mocking the human mechanic polishing a memorial fighter. But what he doesn't realize is that every scratch on that ship tells a story, one that will shatter his arrogance. This is the moment Krillix Voreen learns the true cost of disrespect. The crowd watches in silence as Samuel Brennan, the human engineer, keeps working. His hands move with ritual precision, honoring the 12,000 lives lost. The tension is palpable. Will Krillix double down on his mockery? Or will this be the day he finally understands what honor really means? The camera drone captures Hangar 7's vaulted ceilings first, the shot designed to impress Krillix's followers with scale. His voice filters through with practiced amusement as the lens descends toward the work floor. Welcome back to another tour of human quaintness. The view swings to Samuel Brennan kneeling beside Hellcat 77. It lingers on the mechanic's toolkit, hand-forged alloy scrapers, a solvent brush with frayed synth bristles. Krillix chuckles. Observe the relics these creatures call technology. Like watching a caveman sharpen flint. Comments scroll rapidly on the overlay. Most laugh along. Some fall silent as the camera finds the Hellcat's pitted armor. Plasma scars radiate from its gun ports in spiderweb patterns. And here we witness human superstition. Krillix continues. Polishing ruins as if scrubbers could erase their defeats. Nearby, a Zellarian engineer's shoulder spines flex. Her claws extend just enough to scratch her thigh armor, a veteran's tell. Young recruits exchange glances, their own spines lying flat in unease. Samuel's hands don't falter. He works the solvent paste into a wing joint, fingers finding each stressed rivet by memory. The buffing cloth moves in slow circles, never crossing the same path twice. Ah! Krillix pivots suddenly. His drone swoops in on Samuel's sleeve patch, a winged dagger over the words "never forgotten." Their sentimentality knows no bounds. "Tell me, mechanic, do you weep while you polish?" For 3 seconds, Samuel's jaw muscles tense. The buffing cloth wrinkles in his grip before smoothing again. The drone's thermal overlay flares orange around his knuckles, then fades to blue. A scarred Zalarian in Dockmaster insignia shifts forward, his lower arms curling toward his sidearm. Samuel's eyes flick up just once, and the Dockmaster freezes. A nearly imperceptible headshake. The older alien exhales through his slitted nostrils but stands down. Krillix misses this entirely. He adjusts his flight harness with theatrical boredom. "Humans cherish loss because they—" The hangar's acoustics flatten his next words. Hundreds of species stand in the work bays, but none speak. No clattering tools, no idle chatter. Even the ventilation hum seems to quiet. 3 mechanics, Trilaxian, human, and Zalarian, set down their hydrospanners in unison. Their workstation displays wink out one by one as they power down the screens. Across the deck, a Drivari cargo loader kills his forklift's repulsors mid-lift. The suspended crate hangs motionless. Krillix finally notices. His cranial ridge flushes violet as the drone scans the crowd. Every eye holds the same quiet intensity. The stream's comment feed splits. Alien script flashing too fast to parse. Human language posts snapping to all caps warnings. He clears his throat, mandibles clicking. Clearly some lack humor about there. A metal clang cuts him off. Samuel has set his polishing rag aside. He selects a Torque driver now, calibrating it by ear to an exact pitch before leaning into the Hellcat's engine housing. The sound rings again, precise, purposeful, louder than necessary. 3 more mechanics pick up their tools. The impacts echo off the hangar walls in deliberate rhythm. A Trilaxian welder flares her torch twice in time. Krillix's drone wobbles as he steps back. The shot catches his lower hands flexing, an unconscious defensive posture. His next laugh comes out brittle. "Am I interrupting sacred ground?" No one answers. The Dockmaster spits a wad of corrosive resin onto the deck. It steams through the floor grates near Krillix's boots. For the first time, the stream's viewfinder shakes. Krillix pivots too fast, catching disjointed flashes. The Hellcat's battle scars, Samuel's grease-streaked neck, the Dockmaster's bared secondary teeth. The final frame freezes on a close-up of the memorial patch before transmission cuts out. Millions of viewers witness 3 things simultaneously. Samuel's calm resumption of work, Krillix retreating back, and the single word scrolling through the comments in 17 different languages. Sacrilege. The camera lingers on Samuel's hands. Grease works deep into the creases of his knuckles as he runs 3 fingers along a fist-sized depression near the Hellcat's cockpit. The ship's serial number 77 catches the hangar lights as he turns. Not maintenance code. Tommy's age when he enlisted. 12 memorial fighters stand in perfect formation, their polished hulls throwing light across the bay. Each one represents 1,000 lives. Samuel always starts with this particular dent. He remembers pressing his palm against it when they brought the Hellcat home, still hot from re-entry. The exact spot where Tommy grabbed the ship to steady himself before that final flight. Krillix's commentary becomes distant static. Samuel hears something else. Tommy's laughter crackling through a 2-year-old comm recording. "Relax, old man. These Zalarians can't shoot straight." The memory transmission dissolves into static before the goodbye Samuel still can't bring himself to replay comes through. The buffing cloth circles, the dent in slow, even strokes. Samuel works solvent into the metal's pores first, just like Tommy taught him during those rare shore leaves. A ventilation current carries the sharp scent toward the viewing gallery, where 3 Zalarian veterans stir at the familiar smell. Their clawed hands drift toward identical wing-shaped patches on their uniforms. Behind Samuel, Krillix adjusts his flight harness with a theatrical sigh. Are we documenting archaeology or maintenance? His drone zooms in on the mechanic's weathered hands. Fascinating. He polishes with the same primitive motions humans used 5 centuries ago. What Krillix doesn't see, what the drone's resolution can't capture, is how Samuel's thumb aligns. Exactly with the dent's deepest point. The spot where Tommy's palm left faint friction burns when he hauled himself into the cockpit that last time. Samuel's measured rhythm never wavers, but his breathing changes. Each exhale comes a half-second slower, controlled like reactor pressure. A Trilaxian engineer pauses her diagnostic scan. She watches Samuel's hands for 3 precise rotations before nodding to herself. Without a word, she extracts a small vial from her tool harness, Trilaxian sand polish, reserved for ancestor vessels, and sets it beside Samuel's rag bin. Nearby, a Dravari loader marks his cargo manifest with a notation older crew recognize, 77 in their angular script. He hesitates, then adds the human symbol for remembrance beneath it. The dry erase marker squeaks louder than intended in the weighted silence. Krillix misreads the hush. Finally appreciating human inefficiency? His mandibles click in amusement. Watch how many movements he wastes, every pass identical like faulty programming. Samuel's fingers find a stress fracture radiating from the dent. The fracture pattern would baffle most technicians. Superheated alloy cooled too fast during emergency repairs mid-battle. He works the edge with a specialized pick Tommy forged from salvaged bulkhead armor. The tool hums at a frequency old pilots know means emergency patchwork. Veterans from 6 species track the sound. A Zalarian gunner's secondary eyelids blink twice fast. Her retinal implant projects a tactical replay only she sees. Human fighters interposing themselves between her crippled cruiser and the neutron wave. The pick's vibration matches the oscillation of failing shield generators that day. Krillix steps closer. You buff that spot 47 times per maintenance cycle. He taps his wrist display where the statistic flashes. Our AIs tracked it. What possible purpose? The dockmaster interrupts by activating a damage schematic above Hellcat 77. Purple hollow lines reconstruct the ship's original battle scars. One fracture snakes across the projection exactly where Samuel works now. The schematic's timestamp flashes Kepler crisis dates before shutting off abruptly. Samuel finally speaks, but not to Krillix. Easy, girl. His voice drops to a register the ship's latent audio pickups might still recognize. Just cleaning up. The solvent bottle trembles slightly as he squeezes. The only outward sign his composure costs him anything. Mikhail Vulov rolls up on prosthetic legs, his wheelchair repulsors kicking up fine dust. He drops a microfiber cloth next to Samuel's knee. The fabric bears the insignia of Tommy's squadron, now a burial shroud for 417 names. Samuel uses it to polish the dent one last time before moving aft.